Hello, hello. It is I at almost midnight, the day before I want to post a video, so we'll see how this goes. I'm plasmatical. Sometimes problems goes at the end. I can't really decide. Just plasmatical for now, I guess. And it was just Christmas a few days ago. I'm really out of the loop here. Like, oh my goodness. There's this in between Christmas and New Year's where my brain just kind of shuts off. The main thing here will be the watercolor pens that my brother gave me. They are really cool and I already lost the box. Oh man, where are they? There it is. Jen Crafts watercolor pens. So in this video I'm just going to be testing them out, kind of reviewing them, but I'm also really unqualified when it comes to watercolor painting because I've just never been a person to paint. That's why I always use pens and ink and graphite. That's what I'm good at, that's what I stick with. But let's get out of the comfort zone. So as you can see, there is a wide variety of colors here. It's actually pretty nice. We've got more cool colors than warm colors, but there is a nice variety of oranges and pinks and a lot of greens. Actually, I was surprised by that. There's not that many blues, but there are like 4 different greens. But it's still a nice set. Lots of colors to choose, mix with. Since they are watercolor, there is a lot more mixing involved than if they were like regular markers, and even alcohol ink. Depends on what kind of quality you have. They're not the easiest to blend, but these ones, since they are like water soluble, it's really up to you. So these are all the colors. It has 20 pens and it also comes with a water brush, I want to say. I'm not sure about the technical term for it, but that's what I took it for. And you'll see that I had a lot of trouble with it. But for now, I swatched all of the colors and it wasn't what I was expecting because this is the first time I've ever had watercolor pens. But I did eventually figure out that they're not super opaque on the first go, but if you layer them twice, it's a pretty good color. And these ones particularly are very bright. I like them a lot. You can get really good neon colors with them. And the yellow especially is super opaque. It will go over dark color. It's insane. So once I've got everything swatched, you can see it's a nice array of colors. I took the blue and made a little, I guess well there, just layered a little bit, and decided to test out that water brush. And I'm so clueless with it. I had no idea what it was. It was kind of moist. There wasn't any water in the chamber, but it was a little moist. So I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And you can see that I'm really blending it. I'm just picking up some of the color because it's wet paint. And I'm totally confused about it. I can open the chamber, there's no water in there. I put water in there and still couldn't get it out. I had no idea how to use it. I ended up having to search it up on YouTube and try to figure out what the heck it was because I've never seen these before. I felt so dumb. But I eventually figured out that you have to just squeeze it on the sides and the water will come out and it'll get the brush wet and it'll be usable. So hurrah, figured it out. And then for this, I ended up not using any regular brushes. I just used this one water brush thing. So I used it and it was actually pretty cool once I got the hang of it. So you'll see that I then swatched a few other colors, making sure I can blend it. And what I figured out was that you can lay the color down and blend it really quickly. But if you let it dry for more than a minute, then it's going to be very difficult to pick the pigment back up. But overall though, I felt good using it. It wasn't super complicated. As soon as you figure out how to use the water brush, it works really well and I like it. So once I stopped making a fool of myself and figured out how to use these pens, I decided to do a whole piece on them. I love the Mandalorian, and because Baby Yoda is the best thing that has happened in 2019, I decided to do him. And it even worked out because there's a ton of greens in this set, so perfect. So separately, I sketched and inked this out. I don't trust my ability to do painting without defined borders, so that's why I inked it. probably become braver later in time, but for now we're just gonna stick with hard edges. So you can see that it's kind of difficult to get a nice even base layer with these pens. Even though I got the page wet beforehand, like I brushed the water pen over it, and then I went in with the watercolor ink pen and just brushed over it pretty broadly, and then over that went with the water pen again, it was still pretty difficult to get an even layer. I eventually gave up on it just so that I can start going in with the details and hopefully cover up the patchiness. These pens definitely work a lot better for the little details for sure. I think that's what they were mostly designed for. I don't think they're very good for big swatches of just flat color. I really liked using them for like the eyes, where I could get in there and do little details with different colors, like mixing purple and brown to create more depth rather than using straight black. And just, I need to gush about the Mandalorian for a bit here. Sorry if you don't like the show. I do not care. I love it. Now, I don't like Star Wars. I've never been a fan. I've never seen a single movie. I've only seen a few bits of, which one was it? The first one of the new trilogy, The Hope Awakens, whatever the heck it's called. A New Hope, I don't remember. Either way, not a big fan of Star Wars, like, at all. Never interested me, none of that. But then the Baby Yoda meme started going around, and I was like, what is this? Why is it so cute? I want more. And so I searched up about the show, and turns out Pedro Pascal is in it, and I really liked him in Narcos. That's where I knew him from, and apparently he's been in a lot of other things. I did watch him in The Equalizer 2. He was good there. And he was also on Game of Thrones, I think people said. I'd never watched Game of Thrones, so I'm not sure, but I'm sure he was fantastic in it. He's such a good actor. I love him. So I saw this as a show where you never see his face, but it's still him, and there's Baby Yoda involved. And I was like, you know what? Sign me up. I am in. And I binged the whole show in just about one sitting, and so good. It happened to be right when episode 7 released, so I had to wait a whole week to know what happened to Baby Yoda. And let me tell you, it came out yesterday, episode 8, and it was amazing. And if you haven't seen it yet, I mean, it's probably get uploaded Sunday, so it'll come out 2 days ago. So if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. It's so good. I love it so much. Taika Waititi is such an amazing director. I've always loved him. And then the scene with the 2 stormtroopers at the beginning, that was straight out of Red vs. Blue, and I loved it so much. I need to stop ranting, but it's so good. Just go watch it. Anyways, back to the actual painting that I'm doing here. You know, the topic of the whole video, the watercolor pens. Haha, ADD brain likes to just lose track like that. Painting with this was weird because I don't paint in general, and it didn't feel wrong, but it just felt so weird to be using pens and then they work like paint. It was so weird, but it was really interesting. The way I went about it was I kind of treated it like Prismacolors and alcohol ink markers. It's kind of a weird way to put it, but I put down the base layer, I put down something slightly darker to start shading, and then I blend that in, and then I put more on top of that and more on top of that, and I just build those layers up. I don't want to do a ton at once and then kind of log up the paper. Now, the paper that I used was not watercolor paper. It is just a mixed media pad that I have, and so I just went wild with it. It didn't bleed through, luckily. I did check a couple of times, but it did take a while to dry, and it did warp the paper a little bit. So you do want to find watercolor paper if you're going to be using these, because they really do function just like actual watercolor paints. So when I say blending, I mean that I put color down and then I immediately go over it with the water brush, because I don't want that color to solidify, to dry there and then have that harsh line. For me, watercolors is a lot of being able to blend really well and create very smooth transitions. You don't want harsh color change, I guess. So you'll see me jumping around the painting, I'll sometimes focus on his head and then I'll jump down to his ears, or I'll leave the eyes alone completely and then go back to them to that very end. Now this is on purpose because I don't want to oversaturate the paper, so I'll work on a bit and then I'll leave it to dry, and I'll work on another bit. But if it's too close, like say the eyes and his face, I don't want to be doing that at the same time while one is drying, because if that mixes in, it will be a disaster. His eyes are super dark and his skin is super light with the green, so that would be a nightmare. So working on watercolors, you definitely need to be patient. You need to let things dry so that you don't accidentally muddy the colors together. Now if you want them to blend together, then that's a whole different story. Go insane. But in this case, I established borders and I don't want things to mix, so I had to let it sit for a long time. And there he's done. The best baby. Oh my gosh, the cutest little baby ever. I'm just saying, Baby Yoda is the best thing that happened in 2019 with all the horrificness. I mean, other than Trump getting impeached, like, ooh, that was awesome. Forgive me, but I am political, so if you don't like that, bye-bye. I had a pretty positive experience with these watercolor pens. They were weird. Like, I wouldn't say that this has awakened my love for painting. Definitely not. It's still not my strong suit. I don't despise them, but I don't like love them with all my life now. No, they were good, and I'll probably, and I mean, I will be using them in the future. Like, they were a gift and I will use them. And with that, I close out this video. This was me testing out the Gen Crafts watercolor pens. They were good. I liked them. Baby Yoda is amazing. The Mandalorian is amazing. And yeah, bye bye.